Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for a new episode of A New Go of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrysanthon, and joining me today is my friend, David Hagan with Sales Uncomplicated. So David, welcome to the show. I am so very excited to have you on today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Anya, for having me. I'm a huge fan of yours, and it really is an honor to be here.
You're too kind. Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of yours as well. And so, David, I would love to hear your story. So, if you don't mind sharing with our listeners, how did you end up in home building? What your journey has been to where you started to where you are now?
Yeah, I was saying to you offline, this is nerve-wracking. I interview folks all the time, and when you're in the interview or a chair, it's not as nerve-wracking. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. You're so gracious and to ask and really to have me. I started in home building in around 2011, so about 13 years now. So prior to that, I spent about 13 years, 14 years pastoring a church. And so I learned to lead volunteers. I think some of my greatest leadership experience came from leading people that you didn't have a paycheck or a title or a position to use. You had to figure out how to really understand people and what values they had. I've been in sales really all of my life. Even as a teenager, I got involved in sales. So I guess I've been in sales and sales leadership more than my adult life. I pastored, went from sales to working in a church bivocationally, working a full-time job and pastoring, and then did that full-time for really almost 15 years. And then in 2011, a friend of mine, Lamar Smith in Savannah, it's something we had talked about for a year or two about me joining the home building company to build a sales team. He was in developing, of course, until 2008 when the music stopped, as he puts it, and he started a home building company. And so I joined him a couple of years later to build a sales team. So got into selling for about a year. I actually sold on site while I recruited and trained and coached folks, and have been in home building ever since. I love this industry. I moved from the Savannah market to the Atlanta market about 6 years ago to work for Meritage Homes here, and spent a little over a year with them, and then about 4 years with Smith Douglas. And so February of 2022, a little over 2 years ago, I started my own company, Sales Uncomplicated. And so that's really how I got to where I am today.
So tell us a little bit more about Sales Uncomplicated. Why the name, and what kind of customers do you work with, and what is your primary concentration when you work with your clients?
Yeah, thank you. So really it goes back to Lamar. I don't know, early on with him, more than just 10 years ago, he made a comment about we had a sales trainer and a national sales trainer. And when that trainer left, Lamar said to me very sincerely, David, you should consider doing that. Like you should do that. And so I spent the next 10 years really purposely gaining experience with national home building companies. And then I worked with two local home building companies through that time to gain the experience of training sales teams, working with sales teams, and understanding the entirety of the home building effort and new home sales effort, not just from sales and marketing, but really wanting to learn back of house production, land acquisition, the whole 9 yards. And why the name? A couple of years ago, I just realized that a lot of our sales training in the home building industry and sales training in general, sometimes I think is unnecessarily complicated. And so I wrote a sales process a few years ago that my goal was to simplify it as much as I could. I think sometimes in sales training, we take an established fact and maybe even some tool, and we take a name and we want to rename it. We want to rename the process or the tool. And so we sometimes I joke on you that I feel like people have taken a thesaurus, and where there's one easy word, they pick two hard words. So that I think sometimes it's this pressure to have something new, this pressure to have something that's different. And so I think sometimes in sales, we make things overly complicated. And so the name for me was Sales Uncomplicated. The idea was to be able to come to market with sales training And the idea was to be broad enough where it's not just home building, it's working in the periphery. So I work with real estate attorneys. I work with general real estate agents and doing training and continuing education. I work with a couple of mortgage companies. And the idea with Sales Uncomplicated was my focus is primarily new home sales, but I can also work in the periphery of the home building industry. And the uncomplicated part, of course, is that sales training doesn't have to be, nor should it be uncomplicated. I found that salespeople will typically embrace training if it's just not unnecessarily complicated.
Love that. And what's your opinion? Are salespeople born or made?
I think they're made. I always say that there are a few uncoachables. There are a few things that I need the player, if you will, to bring to the game. But there really are about four things that when I'm recruiting for a new home sales team, there are about four things that I'm looking for that are innate, that are part of a person's character. And if they have those four things, then I think everything else is skill-based, and anything that's skill-based can be learned. I really do believe that salespeople are made. Great salespeople, I believe, are made. That's a good question. I've never been asked that before. That's a great question.
That's all my years of podcasting coming to
I love it. I
here.
love it. I love it.
So David, what types of new home sales clients do you typically work with, size-wise? How many homes are they building?
Yeah.
And is there a specific process in the sales process that you specialize in? Because obviously there's the pre-sales, there's
Yeah.
the post-close, there's so many different ways where you
Yeah.
can train salespeople. So talk to us a little bit about who's your ideal customer and what types of things do you typically work on?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, I love working with home builders, production home builders. I've got several clients that I'm doing consulting with, and those home builders, the ones that I'm working with, are anywhere from 300 to 800 homes a year. I worked with Smith Douglas in sales leadership for about 4 years in Atlanta. We were about 1,200 homes a year. So certainly have experience there. So there are a couple of things that I offer. I do sales training where I go in. Typically what happens is a builder will bring me in and I'll spend 2 days with the sales team teaching them the process. Again, I call it the uncomplicated method. And so I'll teach the uncomplicated method for 2 days, and then we'll spend 14 weeks in follow-up coaching. So where we'll train the process. And then so often what happens is, and I think we would all agree with this, we go to a conference, convention, read a book, watch a TED talk, whatever, and we get some great training we pick up great concepts, but then there's nothing to hold us accountable to using it. And before long, the book is closed and put away, and we're back to what we were doing. And so I think what is crucial and what has been beneficial to me in my career is when I have some long-term accountability. So after the 2 days of training, I come back for 14 weeks and we'll do Zoom calls. So it's a 1 hour weekly or bi-weekly coaching call. And so that's the one thing I do is sales training. And I'm working with the nation's largest builder right now with a couple of their divisions. And so there really is no team that's too big or too small. I worked with a custom home builder in Atlanta about 2 years ago to work with one salesperson. They brought me in to work with one salesperson. I'm now doing coaching for them for a franchise for about 100 franchisees that they have in their network. So there really is, I don't guess there is an effort that's too small. And then of course, working with the nation's largest builder, there's really not too big. As far as what part of the sales process, again, another great question. I don't subscribe to a lot of scripts. I think authenticity is key. That puts a lot more onus on the salesperson. And when I go in, they love it when they hear, oh, no sales scripts. But then I flip the script, pun intended, and let them know that the reason leadership always has required sales scripts is because they have to manage to the least common denominator, if you will. And so the people that are on the team or in the company, especially these large companies that have divisions all over the country, if I can't expect everybody to do it a certain way, then I may have to provide sales scripts and say, you know what, just learn this and say this. And so if you don't want to work to scripts, then it's on you to give confidence to leadership that you're going to be able to say and do the things in a way that's systematic and consistent with what they want, which is true even with scripts. So often we give scripts, but then we are not consistent to follow up to make sure our folks have actually learned them and can use them. And so I go in and I like to work with the entire sales management. So I think there's a difference in the sales process and sales management. I think sales management's comprehensive from prospect to close. So sales management includes prospecting and prospect management, and then it includes the sales process, but it also includes follow-up management and then backlog management. And so often I think trainers come in and they teach the process from the time the potential buyer drives up the driveway until they either walk out with a contract or walk out with a promise to come back. We miss so many opportunities. Most home buyers nationally don't buy on their first visit. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't ask for the sale on their first visit. We absolutely should, but that just tells us that follow-up is so important. And so sales process management is part of overall sales, comprehensive sales management. And I love to work with home builders in that comprehensive strategy. But one last thing I would say, I do have a couple of home builder clients, at least one pretty large builder, regional builder, that I don't work directly with the sales team. I'm consulting with the C-suite, with the leadership. So I get to do some of that too, which I enjoy and love being able to bring value where I can.
Love that. So David, we do see that it's a more of a competitive environment. People are not lining up down the street anymore, although the market seems to be better than last year. I think there's a lot of positivity, but I think home builders are definitely not in the position where it's like, oh, everything's great. The builder confidence has went down, I think, first time in 4 months as measured by Wells Fargo Index. So it's definitely more of a challenging environment. So David, when you talk to home builders, what is one thing that you think they can do to differentiate themselves from other builders? Because if you look at it, everybody can get the same access to the land. Floor plans oftentimes look all the same. You know, finishes, it's all replicatable. So what's the one thing that you think that a home builder can do to really put themselves on the map and separate from the competition?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anya. Thank you. It's important. And it's interesting when you talk about that and that you ask about that. I think most home builders, whether you're talking about a regional builder, a local builder, 200 or 300 homes a year, or 2,000 or 3,000 homes a year, or even a national home building company, it's wise to do, but home builders are always looking for those differentiators, right? What sets us apart? And you're right. There's so much that is the same. The homes are so much similar. Our trades are the same. In any market, you've got the home builders are built using, in a lot of cases, the same framers, the same plumbers. So they're using the same electrical suppliers. So, appliance suppliers. So things look the same. And so I think it is important to understand brand differentiation and to understand what your unique selling propositions are. And so to me, the greatest brand differentiator for a home builder, I believe, and here comes a buzzword, but I believe this with all my heart. I think the greatest brand differentiator for a home builder is customer experience. I think that I think greater than your land position, greater than your floor plans, greater than your included features, greater even than your brand or reputation or builder name, greater than all of these as brand differentiators is the customer experience you deliver. And Anya, if I may expound on that for a moment, those are all important. Like your land position, of course, is important. Included features along with pricing, where you're at in the market, the buyer that you're targeting, your floor plans and product is important. Obviously, brand and reputation are all so vitally important. I don't want to dare imply, and wouldn't want anybody to infer, that I'm saying those things aren't important. What I'm saying is that greater than those as brand differentiators is your ability to deliver an excellent customer experience, because that's the one thing that you can sustain. It's the one thing that you really can control. We can't control our land position. We might have a great land position today, but land is for the home builder, lots are vanishing commodities. We sell them once and they're gone. And so we can't control necessarily pricing and product and those kind of things. What we can control is our ability to deliver an incredible customer experience. And so again, that's a buzzword and we hear a lot about that. I think that for a lot of home building companies and for a lot of trainers and affiliated support professionals, I think that we make that somewhat ethereal, and people will agree that customer experience is important. But how do I deliver a great customer experience? Taking that which is ethereal, which sounds great in theory, how do I take that kind of out of the air and make it practical? And I think that's sometimes where the disconnect is. But I'll say it again, and maybe raise some eyebrows here, but I think as a home builder, your greatest ability to set yourself apart, your greatest brand differentiator is your ability to deliver an incredible customer experience.
I agree with you, David. And I love that you said that is actually one thing that you can't control is your customer experience. So in your opinion, when does the customer experience starts?
That's a loaded question, Anya, isn't it? Yeah, the customer experience starts the moment the customer becomes aware of your business. So customer experience starts with customer awareness, brand awareness. And so the moment they find you, really the moment they hear anything about you, the moment one of your home buyers says to their friend, hey, we bought from brand XYZ, your customer experience has already started.
As we know, most of customers begin their journey online. No surprise. I think it's 99 some percent. I don't know who this
0.9,
0.11, right? Who
yes,
that 0.1% is, I don't know, but
right.
it all begins on your website, most
That's right.
likely. So let's talk a little bit about separating yourself with great customer experience on your website, because that is, again, one thing you can definitely control as a
Yeah.
home builder. So
Yeah.
give us some ideas of what you think makes a great website customer experience.
Yeah, thank you, Anya. Yeah, I remember when I got in the industry, you'd go to these conferences and conventions, and they would say 60% of all home buyers start their search online, and then it got 70%, and then it just seemed it went to 90%. And I think we can safely say now 100% of home buyers, if they don't start their search online, they're influenced by something that you've got online, right? And so I think a couple of things, the digital marketing aspect is not necessarily in my purview, and it is yours. And I have done business and worked with builders that have done business with Inugo for years, and so could certainly attest to y'all's ability in that. I always say that. So when it comes to a great customer experience online, I think there are two rules. One is show them everything. So show the buyer everything. It's interesting that there are some home builders that are still, and when I say home builders, their marketing effort or the marketing team, or maybe it's the sales team, maybe it's the builder themselves, are still trying to figure out, what do I show? Do I show pricing? Do I show renderings? Do I show the Matterport tour? Yeah, show them everything. Show them everything. Show them everything. It's a model home. Anything that you put in your model home, put online. So the two rules for me are: one, show them everything, and then two, show them the right thing. And that may seem like it's paradoxical. Wait, how do you show them? If you just said show them everything, how are you differentiating between the right thing? And what I mean by that is show them everything. Just show them everything. And then your pricing, product, whatever. Anything that is customer facing anywhere in your enterprise should be online. So if you're showing something on social media, if there's some pricing, or if there's some event, or if there's some product in social media, put it on your website, in my opinion. If there's something online in the model home that that you're showing some pricing that's published, or some collateral material that's published that's readily available, put that online. So show them everything is my rule number one. And then rule number two, show them the right thing. And what I mean by that is, and this is nothing that's earth shattering, we hear this all the time, but I think it's so important to, when I say show them the right thing, I mean that there has to be brand consistency. And Anya, I think when it comes to customer experience, where the great disconnect is still to this day is that buyers hear or see one thing online, and oftentimes they see or hear something different on site. Now, I was talking to a builder just the other day, just recently, it was an on-site agent who was really frustrated because their online sales consultants and their company set an appointment for a buyer who'd come to the company's website, the home builder's website. The buyer came out. The buyer was looking for something, and was told when the appointment was set that in this particular community, they had some homes that were starting in the 600,000s, and that they had something there that could close in July. Those were the couple of the parameters that the customer was expecting, something in the 600s, something that could close in July. This agent was lamenting, we'll put it that way, was lamenting that they didn't have anything in the 600s. The least expensive home they had in their community was in the 800s, and they didn't have anything that could close in July. In fact, they shared with me that they didn't really have anything that was in earnest in construction that wasn't already under contract. And so there was this just great disconnect to this day. There's still this great disconnect where we're not showing the right thing. We're showing something online, or our online sales team, as an extension of our website, has information about some things that aren't necessarily what we're showing or telling or talking about when the buyer gets here. I would say if your salesperson is frustrated, you can bet your customer is frustrated. Your potential customer, they're not your customer yet. They're your potential customer, and may not, you may damage the fact that they could be your customer. When it comes to customer experience online, I think it's just show them everything, make sure that everything that, that they can see everything, because whether or not they come in is going to depend on the things that they're looking for, and then show them the right thing, make sure there's consistency in what they're seeing.
I love that. So David, at Inugo, we typically work with, I would say, more progressive, forward-thinking builders who are open to showing things online. For example, Smith Douglas, you mentioned you worked for them for several years. They're a client of ours. So what do you see with builders now when you say show everything? Do you get resistance? Do you get pushback? Or are builders at this point have come to realize that, in fact, if they want to be successful, if they want people to come in to their sales center, that in fact they need to show everything?
Yeah, I think, and I want to defer to those managers and controllers and owners to do what they feel is right. Obviously, we're talking about very intelligent people. I believe that the home building industry is the greatest industry in our country. I do. In a world where we import our cars and our phones and our clothes and even our food. In the United States, we import just about everything but our homes, right? Our houses.
Not yet.
That's it. Our houses are made in America. And they're just, for me, I have pride in the fact that our industry is still a made in the USA industry. Even though we might import some components, we still make our homes here. And new construction, residential new construction, is a driver of the economy. It has been. I can remember as a kid watching the news, and everything is pointed back to new home sales. And so I say that to say that I defer to the leaders of our industry to make good decisions. They're smart, brilliant men and women who run home building companies and run these divisions of home building companies. And so I wouldn't want to come off as telling people what to do. I don't want to be presumptuous. What I would say is, to me, it just makes sense to share everything. I know that there are some builders that they will have certain, maybe it's pricing. If you want pricing, come into the model home, or if you want this particular thing or that particular thing, come into the model home and we'll give that to you. From where I sit, and again, not to presume to tell folks something different than what they found in their own market, but it just seems to me that we might be losing more potential business by not having all the information available. And that's hard to measure. Those numbers don't show up in our conversion rates necessarily. We can count the people that come into the model or sign up online. We can even look at how many visitors we've had on our website and that kind of thing. It's easy enough to convert the number of people who set an appointment and actually keep it. It's easy enough to convert the number of people who come into the model versus the number of people who write a contract, and then the people who write a contract and close. Those conversion rates are easy enough to capture. The conversion rates that obviously we can't capture is the people that didn't get close enough, into our funnel or on our journey, however we're tracking that. If we don't get them close enough to know who they are, we can't count that conversion rate. And so I think that perhaps we could be losing more prospective customers than we even realize, because we're holding some things back, assuming that they're just going to come in if they can't get it. And what I would say is that they're knowing our competition, knowing who all is there and in the market, and understanding that if they can get enough of what they're looking for from other builders, then it may be that they never engage. And so therefore it's a lost sale that doesn't even show up in my KPI anywhere because I didn't capture them anywhere.
Such a great point, David. I think not many people actually think about this when we look at conversions, when we look at people who made it, and it's, oh, why didn't you buy? But we're missing 99.9% of people who didn't even bother because of whatever it was that didn't click, didn't resonate, didn't have information, something that you didn't, that they said, you know what, it's not even worth my time pursuing it. And I think that is a huge opportunity that most builders aren't even aware of. It's such a shame. So now I was just reading an article, I think it was in New York Times, that 1/3 of all homes on the market right now are new construction. And so that is one of the things that we got to step it up, because we have a huge opportunity to gain that market share. During the pandemic, it slid into the 30s, right? 30% from the typical 10 to 20, 10 to 12%. And so we have a big opportunity now to take that market share and keep that market share. And one thing we don't want to do is, for next go round of those people who bought new construction now, to say, you know what, I did it, no thanks, I'm not doing that again. So this is where you really got to make sure that you're presenting the information, you're giving them everything they want, that you are consistent, like you said, so that they are happy, they're excited, and that next time they want to buy a house, hopefully they are saying yes. So great points for online engagement. Now, what happens in person? So I know one of your positions at Sales Uncomplicated is that you want to really emphasize the fact that you want to meet the customer where they are. Forget the critical path, meet them where they are. And I think one of the phrases I've heard you say is like banish expectations. So talk to me a little bit about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think customer experience is not a little thing or even a big thing. It's everything. Customer experience is everything. And it used to be when I was growing up, and Anya, I'm old. You don't have to speak to that. I know I'm old. And so way back then, we would say that if a customer was happy with you, they would tell one person. And if they were unhappy, they would tell 10. Today, because of social media and the ease of which to, broadcast messages, I think today the truth is, if they're happy, they'll tell one person, and if they're unhappy, they'll tell 10,000 people. And so we can't afford to have folks that are demoting, the active demoters. We have to have so many more active promoters to negate those folks. That we're not going to make everybody happy, but we have to work to do that. And one of the things that I'm a fan of in delivering, because again, so people will agree, even listening to this, people will agree, okay, yes, customer experience is important, but how do I do it? How do I take that which is ethereal, make it practical? I have a thing that I teach, and I don't want this to be convoluted or corny. It'll probably be corny, but I call it the customer experience equation. And so I believe that the customer experience equation just sums it up. And the customer experience equation says that the customer's experience, and this is in general, your voice of customer, in totality, your customer's experience, or individually, Mr. and Miss Smith, Mr. and Miss Homebuyer. So whether it's singular or plural, the customer's experience equals the customer's expectations plus or minus the company's execution. So I'll say that again. The customer experience equation says that the customer's experience equals the customer's expectations plus or minus the company's execution. But so if I may, Anya, would you agree with that statement?
I love that. I have never really thought about it that way, but it makes sense, because if I have certain expectations, let's take a boyfriend, right? If he is not performing to what I think how he should treat me, based on my expectations, I'm going to have a bad customer experience.
Did you say you're a boyfriend? I want to make sure I understand the analogy.
My husband, but I'm saying in general. As a girl, if you have expectations, certain expectations for a boyfriend, and he's not delivering, you're going to have poor customer experience. And the opposite can be true. You may meet Mr. Right and he blows your expectations out of the water, you're
Absolutely.
gonna have amazing customers.
You're going to marry
You'll
him.
be,
So
you
yeah,
will
well
be
here,
a customer for life.
that's right. So there's a book that I read on relationships, on marriage. Gosh, 30 years ago, Dr. Gary Chapman wrote a book called The Five Love Languages. And he essentially talks about that people generally receive love or feel love in one of five ways. So some people communicate and are communicated love by buying gifts or when they're given gifts. And some people, their love language is acts of service. When they want to communicate love to somebody, they'll do something for them. And therefore, when somebody does something for them, it communicates love. I never really thought about it in those terms, but it is exactly what you're saying, that what Dr. Chapman says in the thesis of this book, which have become multiple books. The thesis of that first book was, say a husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, the girlfriend is speaking one language and the boyfriend speaking another language. And ultimately it comes to this conversation where maybe she says, I don't feel like you love me. And he says, what do you mean I don't love you? I just bought you this diamond ring and I bought you this car and I take you to the nicest restaurants. And that's not her language. Her language is maybe it's quality time. You never spend time with me, but that's not. So you have to get those two people speaking the right language, if you will. It doesn't mean you change their language. It's almost, okay, you've got to learn her language and she's got to learn your language. That's so true in customer experience that I run into this all the time. Sales leaders or salespeople, even real estate agents who will say, man, I've been doing this for 20 years. So here's what I do. And I meet with my customer and I set expectations. And I don't like the phrase set expectations, if I may. Who cares what I like? I'm just sharing that I don't like that, because when we talk about setting expectations, that's a monologue. I'm going to tell you what you can expect or what you should expect. And gosh, a month from now, if you're unhappy, I'm going to point back to this conversation and say, I told you what to expect. That doesn't change the customer's experience. In fact, if anything, it damages it. And so that customer experience equation where I say the customer experience equals the customer's expectations plus or minus the company's execution. What I'm saying is now it's not just about what I do. I did for them what I've done for the last 100 customers, but maybe what they expected was something different. And so instead of setting expectations, I want to communicate about expectations. That might seem like it's just semantics. It's not. It goes from a monologue to a dialogue. Tell me what you expect in this home buying experience. And you know what? I might find, very rarely, but I might find up front that we're not a good fit. And in our business where we do a pre-sale and we're with a customer 6 or 7 or 8 months before we even close on their home, I would rather, if what they're looking for isn't what we deliver, I'd rather know that up front and never even go under contract and just save that angst and that damage. I'd rather save that than get there 4 or 5 months down the road because they're not going to close. They're unhappy. Now they're blasting you. They're an active demoter. They're telling the world about how bad your processes and business and company is, when really it just came down to we didn't understand what they expected. Now, certainly there are customers who are unreasonable and you're never going to make them happy. But what I have found is we can exceed the customer's expectations in most cases if we know what they are. And so often we're just shooting in the dark, hoping at the end that we're going to get 5 stars, or even counting on this little thing that, hey, I'm going to deliver 5-star service. And if at any point you don't feel like you're getting 5-star service, you tell me and we'll fix it. Guess what? They're not going to tell you in most cases. The best thing to do is understand what they think 5-star service looks like, and then let us set out to deliver 6 or 7-star service, looking to exceed expectations everywhere we can.
I love this so much. It's such a simple way to put it, but such a great way. Like I remember somebody shared this.
It's an uncomplicated way to put it, Anya.
Okay. So
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Somebody told me a story of a customer who left a poor review. And when the sales team reached out to them, they said, why were you unhappy? We gave you updates every week, like we kept you posted. And the customer said, yes, you gave me updates every week because I reached out for the updates. You never reached out to me. It was all customer initiated, right? So in the eyes of the salesperson, they thought, oh, I gave you an update every week, but I wasn't the one reaching out. So I love that.
That's huge. Yeah.
That is such a great topic, and how you put it with the five language, like that just totally makes sense. So I have to ask you, what is your love language, David?
That's so funny. I think my love language is gifts. My wife and I went through that book together 30 years ago. And then even our kids, we talk about it all the time. And she couldn't care less about gifts. She really couldn't. But that's my love language. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to show me some love, send
Send
me a
cash,
gift. Yes,
send cash.
send money. Yes. Hey, and I'd love, Anya, can I go back to talking about something that you said a moment or two ago about the builders that or understand they have to deliver everything that the buyer wants. And that's not just digitally, that is on the website, but it's about not just even being transparent, but it's about putting everything that you can offer and deliver in front of the customers and streamlining that, just like most builders wouldn't have 30 floor plans because that just offers confusion. If most people are confused, they won't do anything, and confusion leads to indecision. And so
Right.
Jeff Shore says easy equals right. And I love that. I was reading something a few months ago that I thought was an eye opener for our industry, that a lot of retail stores are losing revenue as a result of the theft that we've seen in retail across the country, where people are going in and just criminals are going in and stealing retail merchandise and walking out the stores, whether it's a drugstore or a high-end department store or clothing store. And so a lot of companies are putting products under glass. And so I go to my local Best Buy, and sometimes it's frustrating. I would like to go to Best Buy instead of ordering something on Amazon, because if I'm looking at a DJI drone, I could go pick it up and read the box. But a lot of these stores are putting things under glass. And so there was an article that I was reading in maybe the Wall Street Journal a few months ago that talked about the cost to businesses of putting their products under glass. And so buyers walk in, they want to see it, touch it, feel it, hold it, and they can't because it's under glass. And we understand that the retailers are having to put things under glass. They're literally locking their products up because they don't want somebody to just grab it and steal it. So you have to go find an associate to unlock it. I don't know that stores have increased the number of associates in the store to unlock the products. They're just relying on the manpower that they had previously. And so it really is frustrating. Anya, I don't know if you can relate to that, but
I went shopping yesterday, and that was the thing. I was at TJ Maxx, and I noticed even normally they have high-end purses that are locked. I get it. But even $50 purses were locked. And I was like, wow, this is different. This is new. And I'm a true millennial where if I can avoid talking to you,
right.
I am going to avoid talking. There were a couple of purses that I was like, but it was like, is it worth waiting, getting their attention, and the pressure to buy suddenly? It's like, instead of me just looking and no pressure, and maybe I'd buy, but
right.
So I was like, forget it.
So so it's interesting because, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, you didn't buy the purse.
No.
So what I'm finding in the home building industry is much like retailers who are putting their products under glass. And it's reasonable. I completely get it. I understand it wholeheartedly. But I think one of the unforeseen consequences of putting products under glass is now it's harder for buyers to buy it. It's harder to touch it, feel it, pick it up, and it's like, okay, I won't even mess with that. And so you're walking out without buying something. Maybe it was even something that was an impulse buy that wasn't on your mind, but
Yes.
even
make it easy. And one thing I see now with builders doing new thing, I think in the attempt to collect more leads online, is they're starting to gate their interactive content.
Yes.
And it's like the equivalent of the glass.
That's
No,
right.
don't let them play with it. Let them access it freely. And then they like what they see. They're going to be saving their favorites. So you're going to get that lead anyway.
100%.
Hey, I have to even come in. I have to register first before I get to see what this awesome thing is. Like, no.
That's my point. When I read that article a couple of months ago about, it was completely about retail, but I'm so often thinking about how does that relate to our business? Anything I see or read, and like you do, and a lot of our listeners do. But I immediately see the parallels between what retail is doing with putting products under glass and what we're doing when we don't make parts of what we offer available. It's not even about transparency. I'm not talking about telling the buyer what your profit margins are, or giving them the phone number to your electrical contractor. I'm not talking about telling them everything, but when our products and services are under glass, it may make sense why we're doing it. We're not, we're gonna put a gate on this particular content because we want to capture email address. I get it. Or when they come in, we don't want to give them this information. We'll email it to them or whatever. We don't want to make that available and printed. It just makes we're putting obstacles in front of ourselves. And again, we're putting the product under glass. And my suggestion would be just consider it. Maybe there's no alternative, just like in some retail settings, there may not be an alternative. I would just suggest that we look at that and consider everything that's locked up and ask ourselves, am I losing more business by being locked up than I am by locking it up?
I love this, David. This should be your IBS talk right there. That is excellent, excellent, excellent. On that note, I think this is where we're going to lock it up. So you guys have to come to David to get more information.
Yes.
So plug it in, please. Tell us, where can people find you if they want to learn more from you?
Yes. Thank you, Anya. You're so sweet. So my website is simply salesuncomplicated.com. And so you can find me there. My cell phone number is on my website. So if you want to reach me, my email address is there on my website. And so I'd love to hear from your folks. I think Iñigo, again, is an incredible leader in our industry and would just be honored. Anybody just listening or watching this that would want to have more information about what we do, come to salesuncomplicated.com, and we would be honored to speak with you or serve you in any way.
Thank you so much for such kind words. And David, is there a place where you hang out on social typically if somebody wanted to connect with you on a personal level?
Yes, absolutely. So Facebook, just David Hagan. So you can find me. I'm in Atlanta, David Hagan, or Instagram. If you come to our website, there are also links on the website to all of the corporate channels. So there's the company Facebook and the Instagram, and you can find my personal socials. Do the kids say that anymore? My kids are all grown and they're like, Dad, please don't say anything about what the kids say, what the young people say. But all of my social media channels, my corporate social media channels are accessible. The socials, my socials. But yeah, I'd love to engage and chat. And then even if it's not for business, if just ours in the home building industry, Anya, you and I have talked about this, is such a relationship business. It really is not just about who you know, but it's about who you've seen lately, who you've talked to lately. Out of sight, out of mind is so true when it comes to relationships. If you want to stay top of mind, then you have to stay top of sight. And so if I just love engaging with people in this industry. So yeah, reach out. If you just have a virtual happy hour on a Friday afternoon, I'm game.
That sounds good to me.
I'm in the Eastern time zone, Anya, in Atlanta. So it's 5 o'clock for me on Friday than it is the rest of the country. So if it's only 2 or 3 o'clock on a Friday where you are, it's probably already 5 o'clock here. So let's do it.
It's all fair. David, it was so good to catch up with you. I feel like I could have kept on and made this podcast 3 hours long, but with all the things that we could keep talking about. So I very much appreciate that you are on the same page with us with our philosophy and that you get it. It's great to see that the consultants and the trainers in our industry get it and that you are spreading that message. It was a pleasure to have you on, and I'm sure I will see you at one of the industry events very soon, if not at the International Builder Show. And again, thank you for being on the show today, and I will talk to you very soon.
What an honor. Thank you again. Thanks so much, Anya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.